part of this Instagram live series is really to dive into the importance of community, specifically sisterhood. And so I talked yesterday with a few of my line sisters about what sisterhood meant to them and why it's important to them. I'm a single woman. Some of them are mothers. We all have careers, but still, in spite of all of that, we all need community, and we need community with women. You know, we've talked about the narrative of like, you know, I don't do women, you know, why we're so quick to not do women. But we've given men and other toxic situations a million chances, but we're so quick to give up on ourselves and each other. And so today what I wanted to talk about, it's a different perspective. If you guys do not know, well, actually, people who don't know you, I want to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Here at Mean Girls, we show up fully, so just tell the truth about yourself. So if you're a doctor with several letters behind your name, please tell us. Please tell us. We're not about to act cheap, just like Jesus. Tell the truth about yourself. I am the way, the truth, and the life. He wasn't flexing. He was telling the what? Truth. So please just tell me about yourself, what you do, what you master in, what you doctor in, and then we'll move from there. I'm going to start with Ash first. Is that okay, Sneeka?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ash.
All right, so my name is Dr. Joshi. I just got my PhD in counseling and counselor education. I have a master's degree in criminal justice and forensic psychology and another master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. It's nice to see everyone.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Nice. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Sanika Rachel Gaynor. I have a PhD in counseling and counselor education. I graduated with one of my closest best friends, Ash. To see her. My master's is also in marriage and family therapy, which is same basic tenets as mental health counseling. We're also both licensed professionals and have worked in the facet of mental health. So mental health, marriage and family, school counseling, we've touched on it all.
For
yes,
sure.
we have.
For sure. These are extremely qualified ladies, and I'm just so grateful you guys just are lending your time to have this conversation. And what I really wanted to dive into is from the mental health perspective, because one thing I don't like to do is call myself a professional in something that I haven't studied to show myself approved in. Amen. Because we don't be out here just talking like we know stuff and we didn't study. Come on, I can't get no help in this church. So what I decided to do was ask people who have taken the time to study and do the research. So if you guys could just give me, it doesn't matter who goes first, from a mental health perspective, from a doctor's perspective, why is sisterhood community important? I'll just start there.
So I believe your question was from a mental health perspective, why is sisterhood important, specifically?
Sisterhood and community.
Okay. There's a lot of reasons why that's important. The first thing that comes to mind is this concept of universality, right? There are so many times where we feel alone in our feelings, in our thoughts. We feel isolated in our behaviors. This is only happening to us. I'm the only one doing this. Good or bad, mess ups or achievements. We feel alone in so many ways. And so I think that it's important when you think about community and we think about sisterhood, that with that comes this sense of universality, that I'm not alone, that I go through things that are similar to others. And I can find comfort in that, as well as possibly solutions or new ideas. There's also increased self-awareness when you think about sisterhood and community, because you're gleaning from others and then learning so much about yourself.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. I'm joining Ash in, but I love that concept of, at the end of what you said, where it's a sense of awareness. Like, the reality is it isn't all about you. And when you are in isolation, that weight of everything is just me and I'm the only one, realizing you're not the only one and everything isn't just about you. And I think God has to remind us in this flesh about that every day. Like, everything isn't about you. This isn't just you, you know, from your gifts to your talents, whatever, it's really serves a big universal purpose.
Sisterhood, I believe, is important because we share a sense of interdependence. Human beings, innately, we are social beings. The concept of individualization, and this is coming from a very Eastern lens, is very predominantly white subgroup. That's their identity. And it's not the same for every other subgroups. And
Nice.
even within that, within the white subgroup, we have still seen that interdependence is the key to have meaning making.
Absolutely. I love that idea though, because you brought up something that's really, really unique. That's more of a westernized, like European perspective. I mean, I tell you, these doctors really about to wear us out. Okay, they're going to wear us out.
And I saw the comment on, because I would love her for her to touch back on what she was talking about. Because she was talking about the Western perspective versus the Eastern perspective, and which is individualistic versus collectivism. In minority groups or groups that have been minoritized, come from a collectivistic approach. And so it's not I, me, my. It's very much we, us. And so that's what she was touching on. And her background in India is very much collectivistic. So she was speaking on how her neighborhood raised her. Everything was a family. Her school, where she worked, everyone knew everyone, and they had a hand in raising all of the children. So was speaking on, but yeah, her perspective is amazing when it comes to the value of sisterhood and community.
What I do want to ask you guys though is about this perspective of like, and I talked about it yesterday, but I kind of want you guys to dissect the maybe the mental health side of it. So we know, we've heard it a million times in our life, and I think we've been guilty of it too, the I don't do women. When you hear that from somebody, what comes up for you if they're sitting in your chair and they are one-on-one with you? So and so hurt me, my auntie, uncle. So I really just would rather connect with men and not women.
Sure. So the first thing that comes to mind is trauma. That would be one of, there could be multiple reasons, but the underlying reason for a statement like that, where you choose who you associate with, would be trauma. And all trauma is loss of meaning, right? Something happened to you that hurt you deeply and changed the way you viewed relationships with women. So now you go somewhere where you seemingly feel or at least experience appreciation and acknowledgement, in an effort to avoid being hurt again. And then we use different defense mechanisms. We use repression, denial, projection, and all of the things to keep us safe. We go into survival mode. I remember that in class one day we were having a discussion about trauma, and it was just so powerful. Because we were talking about the feeling of embarrassment, and we don't think even the feeling of embarrassment is traumatizing, but it is. And when you feel even embarrassed, that brings up the same type of emotion as if you were seeing a bear or experiencing a fire. It's the same flight, freeze emotion that you experience. So your amygdala doesn't know, and so when you mention a person trying to figure out or deciding to associate with one group or one sex versus the other, I think about the traumatic experiences that they had in an effort to protect themselves from being hurt again, not realizing that they're just keeping themselves from possible fruitful relationships. And that one experience or those 2-3 experiences doesn't mean that has to be your entire life or your entire story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that makes total sense. But I think that's a really interesting perspective, like this idea that you're being strong by cutting off a complete gender, right? Like in totality, and how much you could be missing out on, especially a gender that is essentially you. And when I hear that, because I remember kind of attempting to be in that space, but I'm so grateful that I have had solid family. I was raised with Dr. Sanika Gaynor. She's my sister. And so I know what sisterhood looks like and feels like from my home. And we would fight and we would go through our things, but she's always still been my sister. But the idea that you have to cut off essentially you. So you're saying you don't do women, which means you don't do you. So why don't you do yourself, beloved? That's weird. Why not?
Well,
You know,
imagine,
it's so
yeah, imagine the level of fear you would experience if you came in front of a bear, in competition with a bear.
yeah.
If you were to see a bear while hiking, imagine the emotion that you would feel. We get that same feeling when sad, when scared, when embarrassed. Maybe not sad, but scared, embarrassed. And that's a part of trauma. And so in an effort to not go back to that place and experience that emotion again, we elect to go somewhere where we think will be appreciated. And even if it's toxic or unhealthy, it's better than being that scared. You understand what I'm saying?
So here,
It's
I have
better
this question.
than
I do.
a bear.
I have this question. So for a woman who maybe has that perspective of I don't do women, but on the flip side will experience similar, if not more extensive trauma with a man, but not give up on that. What is that essentially saying? What is that telling? What story is that telling? If that makes sense.
Trauma bonds. It's not you're not moving away from the trauma bonds. It feels more comfortable to be in toxic and unhealthy situations than to be in isolation. So it's something better than nothing. At least I'm not this hurt. At least sometimes I get this from this relationship as opposed to nothing at all. And it is a lot of I don't know how now to make meaning of relationships with women because I haven't had a positive experience or a positive relationship with a woman. So now I need to rethink what relationship with women looks like for me. I need to make meaning again, or make new meaning, which means there's some intrapersonal work that I have to do. There's some interpersonal work that I have to do. I have to think about my boundaries. I have to think about my expectations of myself and others. So it brings up a lot of work that needs to be done. And it's all a process. It happens over time.
Mm-hmm. And I've realized, and Ash, I'm going to bring you in after this comment, and I'm going to ask you the same questions. Those of you guys that are just joining, thank you for conversations with counselors. It's been amazing thus far. What it makes me think about when you say things like that is how intentional developing relationships are, period, right? It's not something you should go into whimsically, right? It speaks to boundaries, understanding what do I need in this season? What do I not? How can we complement each other? How can this relationship grow both of us? And whether it's financially, whether you're investing with time, whether you're investing with emotion, relationship is an investment, and it's important you invest in places that are going to be fruitful, not perfect, but fruitful. So the first question I asked was, when you hear women say things like, I don't do women, what is coming up if they were in your seat?
I think one thing that comes up for I don't do women is this feeling of, is not my struggle important? This feeling of I shouldn't say inferiority complex, but this feeling of invalidation. Like, aren't my experiences valid over other women's experiences? Wow. And now, we will go into the whole intersection of identities and gender for women. There is a lot of complexities there of looking at women having a lot of marginalized experiences, not being taken seriously, but then now you have another women who have other competing and intersecting identities and marginalization and minoritization. So it inadvertently becomes like, am I not important enough? Wow. And this isn't like conscious, it's a subconscious defense mechanism. As Dr. Gaynor was talking about trauma brain, the piece of invalidation is very strong when it comes to looking at women as competitors, because once again, there is some universality of women being minoritized.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mean Girls 1821 podcast with me, your host, Mo. Tune in each and every Friday for a fresh episode exclusively found on my YouTube channel or using the podcast app. And always remember, words have power. So whenever you speak, mean what you say and say what you mean. Take care.